Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Jewer, and I work with Strength Counseling Services. Here is another submission for our story series. And today we have Albert. And Albert, I'm just going to hand it off to you and have you introduce yourself and then tell your story. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, my name is Albert. I am a PTSD survivor and thriver. I will quickly give you a little bit of history. Of course, I do have a little bit of an accent. I was not born in Canada, but from a very young age, I can remember that my life was influenced by panic quite a bit. As a youngster, I had very bad nightmares, and although I grew up in a very loving and kind and good household and great parents and a great sister, there were things that troubled me. And my parents explained to me that they thought it was a teacher that could have bullied me at school. But anyways, besides the point, I can remember that I had these dreams of complete horror where I'm standing on a surface that is it's like glass. It is glass. And I can see in the distance these glass, almost tentacles standing out like this. And I am sliding towards this, knowing that it's going to cut me up in pieces. My dad did tell me that there was a day where I ran through a glass door and it shattered, and he saved me by pulling me away from it. And we think that's the reason for the dreams. But the funny thing is, it's not funny. I can still vividly remember that dream, and I'm 50 years old. Yeah, that was my first experience with true horror, anxiety. And then as a child, I was a fairly happy child. After school, I did join the armed forces. I did see things in the armed forces that I hope other people don't. And I'm not going to go into detail about what happened there. As a student, I was in a motor vehicle accident. I was hit from the rear and I went underneath a semi. I was hoping, I was, no, I was expecting to die that night, but I did not. I survived. And for some reason, my upbringing, and it's the wrong way to deal with trauma, is to suppress. Don't talk about it. I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. I'm a big guy. My way of dealing with trauma was to suppress it. There was also a incident where I got lost in the mountains. It's not Canadian mountains, but it was cool enough for me to be in big trouble. And I spent the night out in the elements. It was really cold. It was raining. Luckily, with my military background, I built a shelter. That was also something that was a little bit traumatic for sure. And then as a student, or actually as a qualified physician, I was on my way to go help a guy with a head injury, and I was hijacked by a bunch of hijackers, and they just totally overwhelmed me. They cut me open with a machete. I have a laceration from here to there. They poured gas on me, and I begged for my life. And luckily, they let me go. Once again, I just suppressed it. There was also an incident I had a private pilot's license where I flew into bad weather, and that was also a very traumatic event and experience for me. The thing is, I had so many events, and my way of dealing with traumatic events was to suppress it. And yes, there were times when I was self-medicating, definitely with alcohol, with sleeping aids, sleeping pills to just function. And then about 3 years ago, beginning of COVID, I'm a family doctor, but I do have privileges in doing gastroscopies and colonoscopies. And my dad got diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and I knew exactly what the prognosis was. That was the beginning of COVID. Traveling was impossible. And I knew that he had maybe 9 months left, maybe a year. I was very fortunate to eventually travel down to South Africa and spend 3 months with him. The plan was to eventually go back and do his palliative care for him so that he could pass at home. I missed him by 3 hours. And I was devastated because my best friend, my mentor, my go-to guy, my professor he wasn't there anymore. I also in that time went through a divorce, and my ex-wife, who I can say I have a good relationship with, couldn't stay in our little town that I lived in. And I did not stand in a way to move away. And she did take our 2 kids with us, and I'm a very involved dad. So I had a lot of things going on in my life. And one specific night, I went out to go visit a person that wasn't doing well. And I got to her farm, and I could see that nobody has been there for extensive period of time. There were just so many dogs there. And underneath a bush, there was a small little black and white border collie. I rescued him, but he also rescued me because I was going through a lot. And I was a little bit lonely. I tend to sometimes self-isolate, and that's exactly what I did during that period. But all of a sudden, I had this little black and white border collie that became very much like a child. And he got me through the winter. The thing that he enjoyed the most was to, after work, I had a quad bike with tracks that you can drive on snow. And that was his favorite activity, was to go for a run, like 5 hours. And I can still see him running next to me, talking to me in his specific, he was just so happy. And I was just so happy to have this dog who became my friend. And unfortunately, he got killed on the highway. And I still blame myself because instead of entrusting him to someone else, I should have put him in the kennels. He would have been alive today. But the night that he got killed on the highway, I went to go fetch him. And the scientist in me wanted to figure out what happened. Was this a sudden blow to the head and instant death? It wasn't the fact. It was very traumatic. I'm sure that he suffered quite a bit. And something broke in me, something really big just broke. It was the last straw that broke my back. And within a week or two, I knew that PTSD was back. I had the back flashes flashbacks. I had the nightmares. The nightmares were me killing him on the highway, and the backflashes would just come randomly where I could see him running beside me, losing ground on me, and then eventually just disappear in the mist. And there were animals that attacked him. And for me, it looked like hyenas. Those are animals that I know what they look like, but it was back, and it was back with a vengeance. And I was in denial because I knew how difficult it would be to get through this again. Again, it was during COVID. Lots of people were seeking help. I reached out to a wonderful person at the Saskatchewan Medical Association, and she put me in contact with a group that did or do EMDR treatment for PTSD. And I did the intake, and I can remember that my therapist said, you have to be in a good place. You have to have a solid support system, because it's going to be emotionally draining. And we talked about a safety plan for if things got too much for me, what to do. I was very fortunate that I could take time off work, and I decided to go stay with my sister and her husband. I'm really glad I did that. The first 2 sessions, I could already feel the relief, but nothing could have prepared me for what was to come. The real treat. Of course, it's Zoom. We call it tapping. I literally sit like this and I tap. I had a safety place that I could go to in my imagination. It's a place that I know very well. It's a pool with dark water because of the tannin in it that gives it that dark color. I could feel the temperature of the water. I could hear the birds. I could hear the water running over pebbles. I could see the clouds. It was close to a place that is very sacred for me and my family. That was my safety place. And I went there so many times, tapping, going to my safety place. EMDR, the sessions itself, although it is emotionally draining, it's not horrific. It's gentle. Although I relived events, it wasn't traumatic. The hard part of it was after the sessions. And if I can explain it, for me, it's like cutting into a very deep abscess that has been there for a long time. And all the poison and the pus starts coming to the surface. It's not something that I couldn't stop it. I couldn't make it come out faster. I just had to do it until it was done. And eventually it was done. In between sessions, I was very emotional. I am not a needy person, but the almost the needy child in me came out. And I think that stems back from my first experiences with trauma or anxiety as a child. I think that was coming to the surface. That was definitely not myself. I was just on a emotional roller coaster. I had the support of my my sister and her husband, and I played a lot of pickleball. Strange. After the fact, I met a guy, he's a veteran, about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, who also went through the same EMDR treatment. And we started, and he said, pickleball. It's because it takes you have to concentrate. You have to go out and hit this ball across a net, and there are rules. And that was my escape mechanism because for 2 hours, 3 times a week, I concentrated on a little yellow ball. And it was just great to feel semi-alive. The other thing that I did was I did a lot of cross-country skiing. I would go out and ski for 3 hours at a time. It was the exhaustion, number one, helped me to sleep. Plus, once you get to a certain level of exhaustion, you stop thinking about what you're going through. So I got really fit and I played a lot of pickleball. As I've said, it was emotionally very draining. There were times where I physically looked at myself in the mirror and just say to myself, you will not give up today. Not today. And that is how I did it. I did it one day at a time. I had my safety plan. Luckily, I didn't have to use it. But yes, there were times where I wanted to just not be here and just give up. But I kept on putting in the work, and it paid out. The investment that I made, it paid out immensely. It saved my life. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit emotional because I still can't believe that I went from someone who didn't want to be here to someone who wants to be here and wants to share my story. I got out of this black hole of misery, and I'm standing in the light. And for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid. I can do stuff that I couldn't do a year ago. I've been symptom free since half of January. I went on a quest to see whether this really worked. And I drove to Victoria, BC, all the way from Saskatchewan. And number one, I'm not a person that enjoys driving by myself. I am afraid of heights and structures, and there are plenty of heights and structures between Saskatchewan and Victoria, BC. I went over bridges, really high bridges. I have a watch that can tell me my heart rate, and my heart rate stayed like 65. I went over a bridge 3 times to see whether this was really working. And it's small little miracles like that. I stopped on that bridge and I looked down and it was high. And I wasn't in a state of panic. I could enjoy the scenery. I also went on a sailing course for 5 days, and that was also something that I couldn't have done in the past. I had a very unpleasant experience, panic attack on a boat in the ocean. And I went for a 5-day sailing course and I enjoyed it. And another thing is there is this suspension bridge in Golden, BC. It's high. It's really high. And I crossed that bridge and I could stand still and enjoy the scenery. And I had a healthy fear of heights now. I could feel like this is high, but the terror and the panic wasn't there. I still get, like any other person, I still sometimes get afraid, but I have a normal afraidness. I don't have panic and terror that controls me anymore. And that, for me, is the magic of EMDR. I am so glad I did this. This is the best thing that I did for myself. I wish I did this 3 decades. And the message that I want to send out is, if you have a friend, family member, anyone that you know who is struggling with PTSD, even just panic, anxiety, give EMDR a chance. It is a modality that worked extremely well for me. I cannot overstate it, that how that black hole that I was in, I couldn't see the light. And I got out of that black hole with the guidance of a professional, a true professional therapist, counselor, who took my hand and helped this 250-pound big guy out of my black hole. And I'm standing in the light and I am living like it's nobody's business. I want that for everyone. I want that for everyone who has issues with anxiety, depression even, but especially PTSD. It saved my life. My children can see the difference. I have a 12-year-old, and she just told me the other day, I told her what happened, and she can see the difference. She says that I'm present. I'm always there. My mom, who saw me in my darkest hours last year about this time, is visiting, and she cannot believe the transformation that took place in, and the person who I am today. I'm a happy person again. Another thing about the buildup of all of this, I became an angry person. That was my defense mechanism, was to be angry. And I could be very short with people who challenged me because I felt that they were attacking me. That was my defense mechanism. It's completely different now. I listen to what people say. I don't get angry. Let me rephrase. I still get angry. I just don't act out. And that's another benefit of EMDR, is I have control over my emotions. And that's not something that I was very good at in the past. I have a real interest in EMDR. I've read several books. I recently bought this book about EMDR, and I'm studying it because I want to know, the scientist in me wants to know how this works. And it's great to learn something about something that like almost destroyed me. I am extremely grateful to the people who stood by me and who helped me through this ordeal. And I really hope that my future and the way I live today will be a reflection of a treatment that worked really well. No, it didn't work really well. It worked exceptionally well. That is how well it worked. And I want people who knew me in the past and who see me now to see the difference and say, what did you do? How did you get there? And it is it's such a simple process if you're willing to put in the work, and it's gentle, but it is, for me, it was definitely emotionally draining, very draining. I've lost people in my life while I was doing the treatment. I cannot blame them because there were so many emotions that came to the surface that made me look like someone. It made me very needy. That's how I can, if I reflect back, it made me very needy. I was clinging onto every little piece of support that I could get my hands on, and sometimes a little bit too hard. I wish that those people will one day see me and see the difference in me, because it is one hell of a difference. It's great to be back. It is great to live life happily and have plans for the future. I guess that's my story not in a nutshell. It's more than a nutshell, but my take home message is to anyone out there struggling with PTSD, panic disorder, please do yourself a favor and give EMDR a chance. It literally, it saved my life.
Albert, I'm so pleased and thankful that you were willing to be vulnerable and come onto this platform and share this story, because I can only imagine how I can hear your words, but to really at the core feel what you felt. I can only imagine what that was like for you from this really horribly dark place where you weren't sure if you were going to survive. That is really what I heard you say. Right. And then coming into this treatment that you really didn't know what would come from it.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, I just want to check this out with you. It seems to me like you, even in that dark place, you did have some glimmer somewhere that said, I need to get through this, or I need to live. And I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about what that was when you decided to just do it and actually get the help, and how you got to that place of saying, yes, okay, I'm going to get this help. I'm going to climb out of this hole.
Okay. I met a very special person who showed me that good people exist and that life could be good. And I made a promise to myself that if I were ever to be a person who could be a valuable and loving partner, boyfriend, whatever, husband, that I had to go face my demons, because I have so much to give. But I had these chains that just it just pulled me down. And that was the turning point for me. That was like, I need to go and deal with this if I want to be happy again. I had to go deal with the unhappiness in me before I could be a loving partner, boyfriend, husband again. That was my motivation, because I wanted that for me. And I made phone calls, and I was directed to a treatment facility online. And I'm so glad I did. I knew that time was running out for me. I knew. And I knew a little bit about EMDR. I was a little bit skeptic about it at first, but I'm a firm believer now. Hard, I'm firm. And yeah, the drive behind it was, I knew I was running, I was running out of time. I could feel the coldness creeping in on me. And I knew that I had to go do something that at the time scared me. But I reached out to the Saskatchewan Medical Association. We have a director there of physician. She's the director of the physician support program. Wonderful person. And she put me in contact with a counseling program, counseling firm. And I was very blessed to have a real connection with a professional that I could be vulnerable with. And I could spill my guts. And the other thing about EMDR via Zoom is I will probably never walk into my therapist. I'm not going to meet her in Walmart. And that gave me the opportunity to really open up and let all the poison come.
That's incredible. When I think about it, there's a lot of people in the world who their online counseling is now more and more prominent as time goes on, especially in the last 3 years. But there are a lot of people out there who will say something like EMDR, like that needs to be done in person. And it's really incredible to hear your story, to see that not only did EMDR save your life, as you said, but it was also online. I'm wondering if, and I might know the answer to this, but I want to ask, do you feel like having done this online versus having done it in person, do you feel like you miss out on anything? Or would you still absolutely recommend online EMDR to people as opposed to in person?
I prefer online. It's, of course, the human interaction it's important. But for me, doing EMDR online, it was the way to go. I've had in-person sessions with psychologists in the past, and I prefer online because you don't have that personal, you do have a personal relationship, but you're probably not going to run into your counselor. So it really gives you the opportunity to open up and spill your guts and get it out, because that's what I needed to do. I had to get every little detail out. Everything had to come out. And that is not always possible if you have a therapist that you might walk into or see at a function and feel awkward about it. I think that I think we all know that therapy, online therapy since COVID started, opened up a new chapter in therapy that is highly successful. I almost want to go as far and say EMDR should be done online and not in person. For me, that's my experience. It was fantastic.
Thank you for that, because I think that a lot of people who will watch this video might benefit from hearing that, and just to get that different perspective and maybe clear out some of the clouding thoughts around it or the judgments around it. So that's really clarifying. Thank you, Albert. I'm curious, we have a bit more time here. Before we check out, I'm curious about, just want to figure out my question here. You came to counseling, or you went to counseling because of trauma, PTSD, this dark place that you were in. And although sounds like there was resolution to all of those pieces, you also resolved this fear of heights, which is pretty incredible because you didn't actually come to therapy for that fear. And I'm wondering how that happened.
I think, well, I know I still do the tapping and I still go to my safe place. I didn't do the tapping on the bridge, but just me putting down one foot, and just not allowing my brain or allowing fear what's the word I'm looking for, to take over. It was high, and I looked down and said, this is pretty high, but I had a normal reaction. It wasn't controlling me anymore, but I still did my tapping exercise in a different way. And I think it's because I realized that it was possible to live without panic, and that I could tell my panic part of my brain to say, you go sit there. I acknowledge you. You are there, but I'm not going to allow you to interfere too much today. And I'm reading a lot about it. I will eventually get the answers, but there were so many phobias that it just isn't there anymore. It's a wonderful spinoff. And the scientist in me, I want to explore it and see, how does this work? Because it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I'm impressed by your willingness or your drive to go and research it and read these books. And I think that someday you will figure out, and you never know, maybe someday you'll be an EMDR practitioner. When things happen in our lives that they impact us so deeply and they help us to completely change our lives or save our lives, it just makes sense that we want this for the world and we want to share this. And that's just incredible. And what you've done is you've taken these tools that your therapist gave you, and then you applied it across the board. It wasn't just, okay, I'm going to use this to manage my PTSD. I'm going to take this and I'm going to see what happens to my fears. And when I'm panicking and things, and that's brilliant and incredible. And I want more people in the world to know that when you go to a therapist and they offer tools, tips and tricks, practices that you can do, it doesn't mean that it's restricted to just that issue. It can be useful across the board.
Absolutely. Right? And that's why the other day I stood with my mum. There's a train bridge that runs across the Saskatchewan River. Now, for me in the past, number one, on a structure with train passing a year ago, that would have spiraled me into the a business of all the businesses. And I took a video of me doing that and saying, I cannot believe the spectrum that EMDR covered for me. There is so much to learn, and yet maybe one day I will practice EMDR, but for the time being, I just want to be an advocate. I want my story out there to say, look what it did for me. I want that for you as well. And it is so possible. And a relatively small investment paid out massively, like massive. I am so grateful for what I have today. And I'm eager to explore more and see what aspects of my life treatment will help me with. Because I still do it, although I'm not in active therapy anymore. I still do my exercises, and I'm almost on autopilot. I know that the time will come where I have to check in and maybe just do the maintenance, and I will definitely do that. For the time being, I feel it's not necessary, but it's a way of life for me. And it's a great way of life. And it's so simple.
Yeah, Albert, this has just been a really incredible story and incredible journey with you. I've learned so many things about you today and the resilience that you have within. And I truly believe that we all have this inner truth or this inner genuine core self. And that becomes hindered when we have pain or when we have experience abuse or trauma, and we don't know how to get there. And with everything that you've done in therapy and how you've applied that, extrapolated that through your other aspects of your life, it seems to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that you're really identified with this core genuine self that you didn't have access to a year ago.
No, no. I experience emotions these days that I had to go and give names. We all know what sadness is and happiness and anger, but I have this other feeling, and it's a feeling of being at peace. Like whatever was chasing me for 3 decades just stopped chasing me. And that is also a feeling, and I don't have a name for it yet, but I know how it feels. And it's a great feeling to not feel like something is chasing you down. And to be a happy person again. When I spend time with my kids, I'm present. When I spend time with my family, I'm present. I don't have this demon that's chasing me anymore. It's gone. Lots to learn. Lots to
Yeah,
learn. We'll continue learning about the miracle that happened. There was a movie. Can't remember the actors, but I think the name of the movie was Things That We Lost in the Fire. It's different for me. It's the things that I gained in the fire. And I've a lot. I'm very grateful for what was given to me. To be able to look back a year ago where I probably didn't want to be here, where today I want to be here. My next thing is I want to see if I can jump out of a plane. I don't know. I don't know.
That's incredible. If you do that, I hope you take a video and you send it to us.
With a parachute.
Of course.
Yeah. But what a road. What a roller coaster road. But the transformation that took place, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. And it's a miracle that I think is available to a lot of people out there. And I want to be an advocate. I want people to see the difference in me, because there are people in my past that knew that I could be a very hard, the part of me that could be very rude and abrasive. And those people, I hope that they can one day see that something changed in me. And that advocate that I want to be, it's not only about PTSD, it's about all these other aspects that came with it and made me whole again. It's nice for me to hear from other people who knew me in the past. For now, it's my family and friends who say, you are different, and they can see the difference. And they call it a transformation. So if they call it a transformation, it must be huge. For me, it's the biggest thing that ever happened in my life. Wonderful thing that happened. Except for my kids, probably the biggest gift I ever got. And I'm protecting it. And I will continue to protect it. And if I have to do maintenance therapy, so be it. Because what I have now is absolutely worth protecting.
It sounds like not only do you want to be here, but you will do everything to be here.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I want to reach out. I want to be here. I want to be here and make a difference. Previously, I had a job that I did that paid the bills. My work is different today. I enjoy it again. And that's also one of the benefits that came with the EMDR.
On behalf of myself and this agency and all the people that might benefit from the words you've said today, thank you. Because I think it's incredibly important to tell people out there that maybe don't even know EMDR exists, that this is a trauma treatment that can be so monumentally helpful. And perhaps if they're maybe not ready for EMDR and that emotional exhaustion you talked about, there's therapy that exists that's different and that can bring you into being prepared for EMDR if that's the way you want to go, right? But that therapy, period, is what helped you to save your own life. The modality of therapy is what works for you. And there are so many, hundreds of modalities of therapy that will vary in how they work for people. And you found yours. And I'm so impressed. You've been symptom-free since the middle of January. And I do believe that there will be periods in your life that will be difficult again, from my own experience in therapy and as a human being. And to go back and do some maintenance, you're super open to that. And it may be necessary, but you have this tool here that you can just use on your own. It's incredible that you continue to do that. Right? It's so simple.
Yeah. And I know where to find that tool. I won't be in despair. I know where to go find that tool. And if I want to finish off with a message to those struggling with PTSD, anxiety disorders, you are not crazy. You are not alone. And if you're willing to work it, it will pass. And you will stand in the light once again.
That's beautiful, Albert. Thank you so much for your time today.